I'm Sean Fennessey, and this is The Big Picture, a conversation show about the Golden Globes. My goodness, it is a beautiful Monday morning here in Juan Soto's America. Congratulations to him for signing with the New York Mets. But first, something a little less dashing, though somewhat dashing, is the Golden Globe nominations. Always dashing, Joanna Robinson. Hey, Jo, how are you?
Oh, hello. How are you? I'm thrilled to listen to your Richard Gere convo. He's also currently crushing it on The Agency. Like, it's Gere season, and I'm thrilled.
It really is. I haven't had a chance to see The Agency yet, but I look forward to it. Did The Agency get any TV nominations at the Golden Globes? No. It's very sad. We will not be discussing the TV nominations at the Golden Globes because I don't watch enough television to really understand what's going on there. But we will talk about the film nominations, and there were a bundle of them. This is always a complicated conversation, Joanna. We'll talk about the perceived snubs. There's no such thing as a snub. We recognize that, but we're going to use that term anyway to discuss these things. The surprises, the WTFs. WTFs is something that I have leaned on in the past at the Golden Globes. This year, maybe fewer than ever. Maybe the Golden Globes are changing a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think what you and I agree on, based on me perusing your notes so far, is that it's some of the same antics, silly goosery that we've ever seen from the Globes, and then there's some take us seriously, please. So it's just like an interesting combination of like new Globes and old Globes. The old Globes are not dead yet, based on these nominations. I love how hard it is to guess what the Globes are going to do. That's actually, we've been talking, checking in all season about how this is an unpredictable season, and it is, and that's been a really fun part of it. We don't have any of these like foregone conclusions necessarily. Some are shaping up right now, but the Globes are always going to be the weirdest, and odd in a way that like National Board Review, NBR isn't, because that they seem like odd for odd's sake in a lot of ways, or just sort of defiantly odd, whereas the Golden Globes are politically odd, and that's even more interesting, I think, to talk about. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think obviously there are a few things that make the Golden Globes a little bit different from the Academy Awards or the BAFTAs or any of the major voting bodies. One is that they delineate between drama and musical or comedy. So you've got the option to nominate significantly more people both in that category and in the acting categories, the major acting categories where they also split. And then on top of that, you've got 6 nominations in these key categories and not 5. So it's actually harder than ever for the Golden Globes to quote unquote miss an obvious nomination. And yet there are some misses here. Just to start the convo, I just want to go through the best drama and best musical or comedy, best film nominees. And then we'll get into what we think are the snubs and the surprises, and we can talk through each category where those exist. Sound good?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so for best motion picture drama, here are your 6 nominees. The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nickel Boys, and September 5. And in best motion picture musical or comedy, you've got Anora, Challengers, Emilia Perez, A Real Pain, The Substance, and Wicked. I wouldn't say that there are any stunning omissions from those lists. What do you think?
Not stunning. I would say on a personal level, I'm sad to not see Sing Sing in here, but Sing Sing is having a good couple weeks, so I'm not despondent over it. And we'll talk about some of the sort of trends of some of the misses that the Globes put forth this year. But I love to hear you start this list with as the chief architect of the Brutalist Hive, like with, hope and joy in your heart, and then end it with Wicked. How are you feeling those two poles of these nominees?
I feel fine. I mean, of course, Wicked was going to perform incredibly well at this award show because it's a musical. It's got an opportunity to fill out a lot of those categories. It's got great performances, of course. So Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are both recognized. It's notably missing in director, which is a place where it was not missing at NBR, which Adam Naiman pointed out last week on the show. It won John M. Chu the award for Best Director. That's not the case here. I think it could be a favorite to win in this category at musical or comedy.
Yeah.
As far as The Brutalist goes, The Brutalist has had a kind of an up and down precursor season, especially in the last couple of weeks, where it missed in some kind of big and obvious places, and Adrian Brody has missed in a couple of big and obvious places as well. And that's not the case here. The Brutalist has 7 nominations, which is the second most to Emilia Perez's 10 nominations, which is something I wanted to ask you about too. So 10 nominations for Emilia Perez, a movie that I think I'm pretty mixed to down on,
Yeah.
although I think it does have some really cool performances, and has been critically kind of pilloried for the last 2 months since it hit Netflix, but still was incredibly strong at the European Film Awards, has been incredibly strong at a series of overseas awards
Right.
bodies. And
Right.
now the Globes, which is an international group, is over 300 international journalists, critics that vote on this sort of thing, have really rubber stamped it as a true blue contender. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I agree. I think, we have a lot of data coming out of the Gothams, New York film critics, the LA film critics, NBR. These are all sort of data points to put in the mix and to think about what they've been precursors of. I think we really have to, more than ever before with the Globes, understand them as a international voting body, and that has always purportedly been what they were, but they weren't before, because before you had to be based in LA even if you weren't originating from the States, and that is no longer the case. They've made all these efforts to really sort of broaden their membership, and it's still a smallish voting body, but broaden their membership, make it significantly international. So there are some data points in the voting here that just really lead us towards, you have to think about the way in which these things played abroad, and that comes through with like stuff like The Apprentice and some other things that feel like persona non grata in the American states, but doing well internationally. And so for both the European Film Awards and the Golden Globes to anoint Emilia Perez does not mean to me that it's automatically going to bloom and flourish at the Oscars. But I don't, it is always also like the thing that the Globes can do, and the thing that happens if you miss a Globe nomination is keep your film, your actor in the conversation. And so it is helpful for Emilia Perez to have this stat, and it is helpful for us to be talking about it significantly this morning. And that there are some, we'll talk about some actors who aren't here and the fact that they aren't here probably means their campaign's kind of over based on, some of the precursors and stuff like that. So I don't know that I'm ready to rubber stamp it as a major contender, but I do think we will see it for sure at the Oscars.
Yeah, I think you're ultimately right. I think that there's no doubt that this is a day where some campaigns die. I don't know if it's a day where some campaigns really rise in stature.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a tricky thing. I think the Globes, to your point about international, there are a number of other films here that have been recognized that suggest that's the case. One, The Substance did very, very well here. And we put The Substance at number 10 last time we power ranked Best Picture films, which we'll do again next week after this information.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I still believe that is getting in at number 10 relative to the praise for A Complete Unknown of late. That being said, this doesn't hurt. This doesn't hurt at all to get 2 acting nominations, to get Coralie Farja in Best Director, and to get Best Comedy or Musical nomination. I mean, that's a huge haul for a strange French body horror movie. What do you think?
I mean, completely. I mean, and I hope Katie Rich is feeling pleased this morning, because that was her insistence that we put it in. I think that it's the best news for Demi, right? And I think there were a lot of the school of thought leading up to this was that it would be Demi alone representing this movie through various things. Is the fact that she is surrounded by, that Margaret Qualley is also here, that there's a larger sense of support. Just the way in which you see films absent from certain categories makes you worried about its legs. The Substance grows stability here, but I think it's the best news ultimately for Demi and her possibility of sliding into a pretty competitive Best Actress race. There isn't a lot of room in there. And there's like, in a lot of these acting categories, it seems like there are, you like to say there's no such thing as a lock. I would say that there are like 4 very strong contenders in a lot of these categories, and then a mystery slot for a lot of them. And Demi is definitely flirting with that 5th slot. So that's exciting.
Let's break down the actor and actress races a little bit, because there's something interesting that has that the Golden Globes underlines, I think. In the actor race in particular, I think you find a heavy concentration of probable nominees in the drama category. Whereas now I think it is potentially shifting towards a concentration of nominees in the actress category in musical or comedy. So this is kind of unusual for that category, for that to be the case. But for actor, you've got Adrian Brody in The Brutalist in drama, Timothée Chalamet for A Complete Unknown, Daniel Craig for Queer, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ralph Fiennes for Conclave, and Surprise, but I think a good surprise. Sebastian Stan, the first of his 2 nominations for The Apprentice, a film that, as you pointed out, probably going to do better with non-American voters for a variety of reasons. And I would say 4 and possibly even 5 of the future nominees are sitting right in that category. My gut tells me Daniel Craig is in right now, him being the potential 5th.
Interesting.
What do you think?
It's really interesting because nobody really likes that movie. But I can't disagree. I mean, Brody, Timmy, Coleman Domingo, Ray Fiennes. Those 4 seem
pretty locked in. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the 5th is a question mark. And like Daniel Craig could certainly get in. And certainly I think it would feel more like an anointing of his body of work than anything else, because really people genuinely don't seem to enjoy Queer that much, or it's at least divisive. But Sebastian Stan, I mean, the problem for Sebastian Stan, and this is a embarrassment of riches, is like the split attention of the campaign. If you can focus around a different man, like, because I really don't think The Apprentice is going to go. Just nobody wants to touch it here in the United States, and that is evidenced by the fact that Sebastian Stan was cut out of the Variety Actors on Actors campaigning opportunity because nobody wanted to talk about Trump. There's just like a lot of ways in which that is, for better, for worse. And I actually think there are things to definitely discuss and regard in that movie. So I wouldn't want to not talk about it, but plenty of people don't want to talk about it. So if you can focus the campaign around a different man, another movie that I really, really enjoyed, even more than The Apprentice, I think Sebastian has a good chance. And also one of those chances of, you were in. Do you remember when Sebastian Stan was coming into the studio to talk to you, and I was like asking you questions about, Sebastian Stan as an interviewee and whether or not he liked to do press a lot, and you said, well, I think he knows he's in 2 really good movies this year, and that's true. And so I would love to see. I mean, this isn't just me being like Avengers build. Like, I would love to see Sebastian Stan get nominated for his work this year.
Yeah, I want to spend a little bit of time on him, and we can talk about the musical or comedy male actor race as well, because Stan is also there. I think that it's possible, not likely, but possible, that the best thing that ever happened to Sebastian Stan's Oscar chances is him being, quote unquote, unable to book a companion in the Actors on Actors series that Variety does, where no one was willing to sit down with him to talk about The Apprentice because they don't want to be associated with any kind of conversation about Donald Trump. Now, Sebastian Stan and I talked about Donald Trump quite a bit on this podcast when he came on the show. He was a great guest. I think he was a great guest for a variety of reasons. I think part of it was that he knew he had given 2 really strong performances, was really proud of the movies. He worked for years with Ali Abbasi to get The Apprentice off the ground. He'd been attached to that movie for a very long time. And A Different Man, which he's nominated for in musical or comedy, which is a very dark comedy, borderline not a comedy. The Aaron Schimberg movie, which did just win Best Film at the Gothams a week and a half ago, and I think is getting a little bit more attention now that it's available on VOD, and I encourage people to watch it, is really like an exceptional example of what you can do with that Avengers coin. That you can get a film like that made, that you can take on a part like that. Like, to me, that is the perfect balance of, if you use the franchise stuff to raise the water of your career, float on top of it with a movie like A Different Man is kind of how I feel. So I think that there's some goodwill towards him in that respect too.
And I think Sebastian Stan, that has been a focus of his, because he's not, like, unlike many of his counterparts, he's not even in his post-Avengers era, right? Because he's still in the mix at Marvel. He's
Thunderbolts
about to
coming.
lead Thunderbolts, so he's still doing it. But like, you and I were talking about this when we talked about the cinematic classic Red One. We were like, what has Chris Evans done with his Steve Rogers fuel? What has Downey done? Downey won an Oscar, so like he's doing fine. But like, to think about, what do these Avengers or Marvel stars do? I think for years now, Sebastian Stan has been sort of one of the most interesting people to watch in that regard. So
I fully agree. The other nominees in this category, which is a really cool category of nominees, but I don't think one that you'll see too many Oscar nominations for, but it includes Jesse Eisenberg from A Real Pain, which we recently talked about, Hugh Grant for Heretic, which I just told you in a future episode, one of my favorite performances of the year, absolutely laugh out loud funny. Gabriel LaBelle for Saturday Night, the lone nomination for Saturday Night. We'll come back to that. Jesse Plemons, your beloved, my beloved, for Kinds of Kindness, a movie that 18 people have seen, but he is actually quite good in that film, the anthology movie from Yorgos Lanthimos. And Glenn Powell for Hitman, which was long predicted, but congratulations to the homie Glenn Powell for his Golden Globe nomination.
This is a tremendous Globes. This is the best of what the Globes could be. Because I don't think there's anyone here where you're saying, oh, clearly this is just here so they can get, I don't know, Hugh Grant to make funny faces at the camera at the award ceremony. I would argue there's some of that in some of these other categories. But this is great. Hugh Grant should be honored for what he did in Heretic. I in that future episode that you just alluded to, I was highlighting Gabriel LaBelle as like someone that I didn't really enjoy Saturday Night that much, but I thought he was wonderful in it, and I think his performance should be honored. Jesse Plemons is the real surprise for me. He wasn't. I was scouring, the predictions list. Predicting the Golden Globes, as we mentioned, is a very, very tricky thing to do. Some people got it pretty close, including the double Sebastian Stan nomination, which I was like, I guess, emotionally and mentally prepared for. But no one really had Plemons on the list. And he's, of course, an award season kind of guy these days, but Kinds of Kindness doesn't feel like it exists as a film. So
I saw a couple of people had it. I want to say some folks at Next Best Picture had it. Like a couple of spots had it as I was perusing the list last night. The thing that happened is, in the old days, Ryan Reynolds simply would have been nominated for Deadpool versus Wolverine. Or Deadpool and Wolverine, I should say. And many thought he would be nominated today. So you could make the case that the biggest snub of this Golden Globes race is poor Ryan Reynolds, the most successful and richest smart machine in Hollywood. And he didn't get in. And so because he didn't get in, someone like Jesse Plemons or Gabriel LaBelle or Sebastian Stan for A Different Man is able to get in. A movie like A Different Man getting in over a movie like a big Marvel movie that has a lot of good jokes in it is a change for the Globes. It doesn't mean the Globes is fully good, but it is a new Globes.
I think we'll just say this is new Globes, and then we'll talk about what feels like old Globes. Mm-hmm. Can you remind me why you don't feel like snubs, like why the concept of snubs doesn't exist for you?
Well, snub implies intention. Snub is like a very purposeful choice, and so it indicates that it's against someone rather than for someone else. And so I don't think people vote, especially in these circumstances, like against people as often. These aren't like political elections. I think that's actually more likely to have a snub loser in the Academy Awards when you're making the winner choice, because you've got a list of people already that you're like, I don't want that person. So at
That's
nominations time, it's kind of a complicated terminology, but it doesn't really. It serves an elegant purpose for podcasting.
No. I think that's a good point, and I do think that sometimes there are active snubs, but I think you're right that it's useful to like sort of delineate between the two. As someone who votes in the Critics' Choice Awards, I find the act of filling out my ballot to like, it feels like the nominations ballot feels like you're in the middle of an ocean somewhere and you can't even see shore. You don't even know like what you're doing. And you're just like, I know I'm going to miss someone. Like I'm trying. And then, the act of voting is so easy because you're sort of like, oh, clearly it's this one.
You know what I've tried to do? I vote in the Producers Guild Awards, and when I vote there, I basically just try to vote for my 10 favorite movies of the year for the feature category, and just say like, look, this is what I say publicly is my favorite thing. There's no reason for me to go against this. I'm just going to stick to it. It is one of the reasons why I try to get like to 350 movies a year, though, because I'm like, I really want to feel like I've seen, like I saw Flow over the weekend, the Latvian animated film, which I absolutely loved and I hadn't seen in time for my end of the year episode. And it's so good. It's probably right outside of my top 10, but it's so good. Really good. It's useful to have the totality of understanding when you're doing this stuff, because it can be daunting. Like we make fun of the people who vote on this stuff, but you really want to feel like you've given it a solid and sincere effort every time you put names down.
I think that in the last couple of years, I think this is true of the PGA as well. They've started, instead of us getting physical screeners, which I would like literally physically sort around the house into like piles of priority and all this sort of stuff like that. And it's so onerous it's like environmentally unfriendly, onerous to your mail carrier, all this sort of stuff like that. So they've eventually, and like, I think this year fully moved onto like a digital screening platform. And it's so helpful to me to just like open the platform and just say like, all right, I haven't seen this one yet. What do I need to like take off the list? And I think I'm done, which is exciting. I mean, actually, I know I'm done because my ballot's due tomorrow. So it's like, if I'm not done, then, here we go.
There's only one film that was nominated today that I haven't seen yet. And we can get to that when we get to the international race. Because I'm still filling in some gaps. Let's just talk quickly about actresses and in the drama and musical or comedy category. So best female actor in a motion picture drama is Pamela Anderson for The Last Showgirl, Angelina Jolie for Maria, Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl, Tilda Swinton for The Room Next Door, the lone nomination for The Room Next Door, I believe. Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here, the Brazilian film. Kate Winslet for Lee. And then for musical or comedy, Amy Adams for Night Bitch, a film that we spoke about at length on a future episode of this show. Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez, Mikey Madison for Honora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Zendaya for Challengers. So much like the male acting categories, it's possible that Cynthia Erivo, Carla Sofia Gascon, Mikey Madison, and maybe even Demi Moore all get in at Best Actress. Now, there's clearly some blood sport going on in drama here where you've got Angelina Jolie and Nicole Kidman, who there's a lot of passion for in both directions. I wouldn't rule out Fernanda Torres or Kate Winslet here either. So this category feels like a bit of a knife fight at the moment. What do you think?
I feel like Angelina Jolie and Pamela Anderson and Nicole Kidman to a certain degree. Because Baby Girl is a film I really loved, but like a lot of this feels like old Globes to me. Angelina Jolie, I think, is most famously associated with the most ridiculous old Globes move, which is nominating her for The Tourist, right? So like the Tourist is just infamous. So a lot of people felt like Angie was going to be in here sort of no matter what. Pamela Anderson being in here is also a very Globesy, old Globesy kind of pick. Fernanda Torres, I'm Still Here. Phenomenal film. Fernanda Torres, wonderful in it. And this is a real New Globes critics-friendly pick, not just an international friendly pick, but the critics really seem to want Fernanda Torres in the conversation. And I wouldn't disagree with them. And then Kate Winslet, as you and I have been like talking to Katie Rich a little bit, off pod, this is a campaign boondoggle that has been happening this season. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, Lee is a film that premiered at the 2023 Toronto International Film Festival. It was acquired out of that festival by a much smaller distributor. Kate Winslet is beloved. It's directed by, is it Ellen Kuras is the filmmaker?
I think so.
Longtime cinematographer. And it's her feature directorial debut. Kate Winslet gives kind of a classical Academy bait performance as a wartime photographer.
Unglamorous sort of thing. Yeah.
And it's a great cast. Notably, Andrea Riseborough is in this film. It does feel like this campaign has a little bit of that energy to it.
I think it has a lot of Andrea Riseborough and to Leslie energy is what most people have been comparing what Kate Winslet and the supporters of Kate Winslet in this film. Some of the same people are involved in this as were involved in the Andrea Riseborough push. Though, if she were to get an Oscar nomination, unlike Andrea Riseborough, she would have this. They would be like she was nominated for the Globes, so it's not as out of nowhere the way that Andrea Riseborough being nominated for To Leslie felt in that year. And Kate Winslet, I mean, obviously, like Andrea Riseborough also was like an actress so talented, such a chameleon that people don't like really remember that they've seen her in a million things already, whereas Kate Winslet is, a minted bona fide movie star. So there's like slightly different circumstances here. I wouldn't begrudge her a nomination. It just feels like more political than anything else, or more attention economy than anything else. Fernanda Torres would thrill me. And then Tilda Swinton being here, The Room Next Door. If Tilda had not been nominated, I would say The Room Next Door is out of. It had a really tough run the last couple of weeks in the precursors. It just felt like it was not getting any of the attention that you would hope for this cast, this director, all of that sort of stuff. But Tilda being here means that there's still some life in the old girl.
It's just a flicker, honestly, in a movie that I really wanted to love but didn't really click with. This is Almodovar's new movie that is coming out later this year. There's another name that isn't on this list of 12 that is considered one of the major snubs of the morning, which is Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths. And she's won some precursors. There's a strong sense that she could potentially even win BAFTA. And it is one of the best performances of the year. I've talked about it a couple times. I saw it out of the New York Film Festival. Mike Leigh has been able to deliver acting nominations for actors in the past. Not recognized here in favor of, some other Pamela Anderson over Marianne Jean-Baptiste is one of those things where it's like the Pamela Anderson story is a great story. The Last Showgirl is really a film which has 2 nominations here that is really a cut below the new critically acclaimed Globes. And there's something kind of funky about this. And I'm not really sure, there's 4 significant Black actors who were not recognized today. That is going to be a takeaway. This is a common takeaway for, decades, frankly, with awards bodies. But there are some standouts. Marianne Jean-Baptiste is one of them that we should talk through a little bit. In addition to them, there's also Anjanelle Ellis-Taylor for Nickel Boys. There's Clarence Macklin for Sing Sing, which is a huge performance for me, something that I talked about a lot when Amanda and I talked about the movie, and I talked about it in a future episode. And then Danielle Deadwyler for The Piano Lesson, which I also loved and loved her in it. So none of them are here. And I think they're all pretty significant, quote unquote, snubs. Clarence Macklin and Danielle Deadwyler in particular, I feel like should have a real chance at the Oscars.
Absolutely. Like Danielle Deadwyler has been all over the place as people like and she's wonderful in everything she does. But like she seems like, and like unlike in a previous year when Danielle Deadwyler has been someone overlooked, she is really campaigning this year. So she's really going for it. That's great. Clarence Macklin, Coleman Domingo's in here. And that makes me thrilled. But like, it's bizarre to have Coleman Domingo without Clarence Macklin, especially given the narrative the last couple of weeks, both Coleman Domingo and Clarence Macklin winning in New York, my former colleague at Vanity Fair, Richard Lawson, was in the room at the Gothams, and he was talking about we love to hear insight from the room and like sort of who are the people that are like a hit with the crowd. And it was Coleman Domingo and Clarence Macklin winning at the Gothams was the most rousing reaction for the crowd. And so I know that you and I had talked a couple weeks ago about this idea of like the goodwill, the good time goodwill. You just want these people, you just want to talk to these people, you want to be around these people. This is true of like the Parasite cast, of the Coda folks, of everywhere, all this ones folks, like all of that. And I think I was going to say that Wicked had that, but I think it's Sing Sing that has it, like that this cast or these particular artists are who people want to talk to. And so Clarence Macklin not being here, especially as representative of the non-professional actors in this film, is a huge miss for the Globes.
The Last Showgirl having more nominations than Sing Sing is not ideal.
No.
But I do think I think it's fine. I don't think it's meaningfully affected. I mean, Sing Sing in some respects is a very American story, and its lack of glamour around the series of either non-professional or non-feature film traditional actors might be working against it in the eyes of the Globes. I don't know. It's hard though, because on the other hand, they're nominating folks like Fernanda Torres, who have very minimal visibility worldwide. The Brazilian journalists and critics have been extremely passionate about the Walter Salles movie, I'm Still Here, and so there's been a really forceful campaign for that movie, but there's just a sense of imbalance. There's also something really interesting related in director, which I don't know if I see this as the biggest surprise, but it is one that could have a meaningful ripple effect. The director's branch of the Academy is very high-minded, very auteur-driven.
Yeah, they love to have at least one European or non-American director in there, if not a couple.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think there had been a lot of speculation, and I think there is still speculation that Ramel Ross, the Nickel Boys director, will fill one of those slots as a, not a European filmmaker, but someone who's made something a little bit more conventionally challenging. Ramel not nominated here. In addition to that, again, one of the biggest snubs, quote unquote, of the day is Denis Villeneuve not being nominated for Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 only got 2 nominations here today, which is very sad. Probably even more sad for the fanboys. But
that's us, right? Aren't we the Dune fanboys? No?
I mean, I love Dune. I'm not stumping for Dune to win Best Picture, though. You know what I mean?
Like, I know you're not.
I feel the same way about it that I feel about a lot of these kind of like unfinished stories. Where I'm like, it's a great science fiction movie.
No,
it basically never had a chance to win, and I never really thought about it.
From the beginning of the year, you've been saying that, and I was hopeful that you were wrong. But this is one of the cases where you were right, and that's couldn't be clearer in the way that Dune Part 2 is like at the Globes of all places. Dune Part 2 should have performed much better than it did today. So that's really tough. I still think it could be in the 10 nominations for Best Picture, definitely in a lot of the below the line stuff. But I think you're right that the fact that this is a part 2 of a planned trilogy means we'll have to wait and see. And I'm at the end of the day, I'm not optimistic about that because Dune Part 3 is going to be probably quite challenging. So we'll see.
The filmmakers who did get in Denise Stead, in Ramel Ross's stead, in John M. Chu's stead, are Payal Kapadia, the filmmaker behind All We Imagine Is Light, which is a film that somewhat controversially was not selected by India to be the representative for international feature for the Academy Awards, but has been one of the most acclaimed movies of the year. I know Bobby Wagner, our producer, it's one of his favorite films of the year. And she's been nominated here, which is a cool pick. And her nomination, as well as the nomination of Corley Farja for The Substance, does something very interesting, which is that a month ago, I started thinking hard about Best Director, and I was like, oh, The Boys Club is back. This is
it never went away.
This is a male crew here with, you know, Brady Corbet and Ramel and Sean Baker and Jacques Audiard and all the people who are contending for this award. This could upend that. I don't know. What do you make of Payal Kapadia and Corley Farja getting in here?
Happy. I mean, like, once again, this is maybe the benefit. Should every category be 6 nominees or 10? You know what I mean?
Why not 15?
Why not? But this is the benefit of having 6 places here. Ramel Ross was really surprising to me because I think if you look at the precursors of the last couple of weeks, Nickel Boys is one of the biggest sort of momentum builders around cinematography, around direction. It's less of a getting acknowledged for its performance as film and more for the technical challenges, for the ambition of it. And so Ramel Ross missing here is very surprising to me, though I shouldn't be surprised. It feels very old Globes for them to miss on that front. That being said, I mean, Corley Farja and Payal Kapadia, and especially Kapadia as a narrative nominee, you just mentioned this idea. It's not just that the film wasn't picked to represent India, it's that Kapadia as a filmmaker has been unfriendly to the Indian government, and so it's just sort of this, but this was has been honored in Europe, but the reasons it wasn't picked by India feel unclean. And so this then becomes an underdog, right? Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, I know there is a campaign for this movie for the Oscars for screenplay, for director, for
right, because it
best
can't
picture,
get in international feature. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And there had been some expectation that Emilia Perez was going to steamroll its way to international feature. I'm not so sure that's true anymore. When you see,
I don't think that's true at all.
You see a movie like I'm Still Here doing really well here today. There's a lot of opportunity here. So actually, let's talk about international feature very quickly. So here are the nominees: All We Imagine Is Light, Kapadia's film; Emilia Perez, The Girl with the Needle; I'm Still Here; The Seed of the Sacred Fig; and Vermiglio, which is the movie that I have not yet seen. The Seed of the Sacred Fig is doing very well.
Really is.
In a lot of different places. Not really.
Okay. It's divisive. It really is.
Yeah.
Some people think it's a masterpiece and some people are not feeling it at all whatsoever. But it is definitely the international feature of the last few weeks that has been building up a head of steam.
Yeah. And Mohammad Rasoloff, the director, won Best Director at the Los Angeles Film Critics Awards over the weekend. And, that the critics' bodies proceed with caution when trying to make your Oscar predictions against those things, but that's a big boost. That's a big boost of visibility. And See the Sacred Fig, I thought narratively just had a lot of problems pacing-wise. I feel similarly about a few of the international films. All We Imagine Is Light is a movie that didn't work as well for me also, and I found there's a kind of like, there was a, I don't know what the right word I'm trying to think of is. There's just a pacing issue on some of these movies that didn't click for me, and like Evil Does Not Exist is a movie for me that I would love to see in these spaces and in this discussion. Just seems like they were like, we acknowledged Hamaguchi on Drive My Car, we're good here. We don't need to get into that film anymore. But I still haven't seen every film in this category yet, so it's a little bit hard to say. The 10 nominations for Emilia Perez makes me think that this film is sitting pretty in that race in this award show. What do you think?
I loved Evil Does Not Exist. I thought that was an incredible film with a really leaves you unsettled in a really nourishing way. If I were to pick an international feature that I would most want to win with my heart, I would say I'm Still Here. I really, really, really loved that film. Emilia Perez is so interesting because if you had asked me before the Globes nominations came out based on what has been happening around, I would say it's not going to win international feature. But perhaps now, I don't know. I have some questions, but I'm Still Here is one that I really hope people get a chance to see because phenomenal film, really.
Where should we go next? Should we go to? We've hit Sebastian Stan.
Supporting.
Okay, let's talk about the supporting actors races. Now, there's only 12 here, 6 for the women and 6 for the men.
Mm-hmm.
For the women, the nominees are Selena Gomez for Emilia Perez, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Margaret Qualley for The Substance, Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez. As I mentioned, Daniel Deadweiler not here, Ingenue Ellis-Taylor not here. Who else is not here? Anybody else that I'm forgetting?
Those are the main ones that feel overlooked to me, and in their place we have Margaret Qualley and Selena Gomez.
Selena Gomez? Joanna? Selena Gomez.
I just really did not like her performance in this movie at all.
It's not great.
It's not good. Zoe Saldana, great. I mean,
yeah, she's great. I loved her.
She's great. She should be in the air. She might even win it, and I wouldn't be mad about it. And then Isabella Rossellini, who has, a minuscule amount of screen time in Conclave, but is how they like to say she's running. She's running. Isabella Rossellini is running, and she's running on the energy of I heard someone compare it to like the Jamie Lee Curtis sort of like legacy Nepo baby sort of thing. It's like Isabella Rossellini is film history. The way that, Margaret Qualley is to a certain degree. Sure. So, it's just like, it seems silly at this point to call Isabella Rossellini a Nepo baby. That's not really how I think about her at all. But when you think about Isabella Rossellini, you think about cinema, old Hollywood, legacy, history. So, yeah. And then she's just like, yucking it up on Fallon as well. You know what I mean? Like she's just making the whole entire circuit. So yeah.
Yeah, the thing is she's not a Nepo baby. She's an incredible ambassador for movie history. Her mom is Ingrid Bergman. Her dad is Roberto Rossellini. She has appeared in great films by David Lynch. She was married to Martin Scorsese. Like she is.
I meant in the same way that people were calling, even though she is not Jamie Lee Curtis, a Nepo baby. And as like the Globes, especially like the Globes in the way that they have in their history centered the children of famous people as part of their ceremony,
It's a great point.
So no, I would never call Isabella Rossellini she's a legend. Have you how familiar / in love with her sort of like sex series that she did for what was it, like the Independent Channel?
I think you can find it on the Criterion Channel right now, actually.
I mean,
yeah. She's
that's cinema to
I think that's the thing is that she's kind of a fun hang. And so if you're a fun hang at all these events, she's got a lot of opinions. I stayed in, I want to say it was Brookhaven on Long Island in an Airbnb a couple of years ago and was driving around and I learned that Isabella Rossellini has lived there for like decades and is sort of like the matriarch of the town, which I didn't realize. And she's like, could see her at the farmer's market every weekend and just a very chill lady who's been hanging out in my home island for some time. I'm a big fan of hers. I hope she does well. She's in 7 Minutes of Conclave. Saoirse Ronan, for example, is in quite a bit of Blitz, and she was snubbed in that category. She was also snubbed for the outrun in Actress. No Saoirse Ronan. Is Saoirse Ronan's awards trail dead?
Dead. Yes.
It's dead.
It's dead.
Damn.
It's dead. I don't think of the Blitz. I mean, Blitz is a bit of a snub, I suppose, but Outrun is the one where like I think people are really optimistic about that. But the fact that she's not here at all is a tough one for her.
Not a great sign.
Especially Isabella Rossellini in Conclave. And again, you don't care about category fraud and supporting. I kind of do. So I applaud like a true supporting. And like not only is she barely in the movie, but for a lot of that movie, she's just sort of like glowering and glaring rather than actually talking.
Yeah.
But she's there. And that matters. Tucci didn't get nominated, but Isabella Rossellini did. So here we are.
Let's talk about supporting actor. Here are the nominees. Yura Borisov for Honora. I know one you're very excited about.
Yes.
Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain, speaking of category fraud. Edward Norton for A Complete Unknown. Guy Pearce for The Brutalist, my guy. Jeremy Strong, The Apprentice. And Denzel Washington for Gladiator 2. Mixed bag here, fun category. A lot of guys having a grand old time. A lot of guys doing accents and voices and, mingling around, chewing up scenery.
Yeah. Edward Norton sure is playing that banjo in A Complete Unknown. Have
I'm
Have you
working on my
heard-
Edward Norton as Pete Seeger voice, and I think I'm going to break it out when I do the Complete Unknown episode.
Oh, I can't wait.
But I got to rewatch the trailer a few more times because the voice he's doing is kind of adorable, honestly.
It's very cute in aw shucks sort of way. A very like an Edward Norton demeanor sort of thing. But like, have you heard, as I did, James Mangold compare A Complete Unknown to Amadeus?
I haven't. I think you can make a comparison.
In that
I don't
vein,
know how what light it sits
Edward Norton
in.
is allegedly our Salieri, and that is just I want everyone to just think about that when they watch that movie. A movie I really liked.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, God, it's a little hard to not spoil things, but I think that there's like a bit of an overemphasis on the perception of like, why not me around Bob Dylan, which I think is wrong. I think it's like slightly mischaracterized. It's one of the only things where I was like, this doesn't feel right to me, but I'll save that for when we talk about the movie.
Okay, I'm gonna stop trying to podcast about A Complete Unknown with you, but I want to ask really quickly: have you read the book?
The Elijah Wald book, yeah.
And do you think that's part of the book as well, or do you think that's like a film
it is? But the thing is that like the movie has clearly been that Jay Cox wrote the script,
right,
and then James Mangold rewrote the script,
rewrote it,
and in rewriting the script, I think clearly put in a lot more of the Susie Rotolo stand-in that Elle Fanning plays and emphasized Joan Baez a little bit more in the kind of tempestuous nature of their relationship. And so in doing so, I think, kind of mangle a little bit of the like Alan Lomax and Pete Seeger versus the Electric guys. You know, like, anyway, I'll get to it when I talk about it next month.
Here's what I know. That episode of The Big Pig is going to be a must listen. They all are, obviously, but
it's nice of you to say. I probably won't be having a meltdown is the thing. Like I was expecting a full blown, like maybe we have to wrap this show up because I can't hold it together kind of situation.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's pretty good.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I love that Timmy's in here for it. My guy Yuribor's for Anora. I feel like he's going to get nominated.
It feels like it
for an Oscar.
It does. Especially Tucci going out here, I think, is somebody who that is his spot. And I don't know. It's interesting. I think Tucci's fine. I've been saying for a few weeks now that I think Tucci was missing one more kind of whiz-bang scene where he raises his voice a little bit. But tell me about Conclave. Like, where do you think Conclave sits now? Because Edward Berger got recognized for Best Director here. You've got, I think we have Volker Bertelsmann got the score nomination. It's obviously in Best Drama right now. Conclave is the movie that everyone thinks is kind of like sitting in fourth place but could win. What do you think?
I don't think it can win. I think Rafe's going to get nominated. I think it's definitely nominated for Best Picture. I think its best hope is screenplay. And I'm not even sure that that's going to happen. But I think you could see it. Yeah, but I think you could see it at winning like the SAG Ensemble Award. You know what I mean? Like I can see it popping up around, but I don't think it's as hot in Best Picture as some people are rating it. I loved that movie. I really liked it. I wouldn't say I really, really liked it, but I don't know anyone who like loved it. Do you think is the thinking that enough people really, really liked it that in sort of a ranked ballot it would emerge?
I do. Maybe. Yeah. I think Amelia Perez is divisive. I think Wicked is divisive. I think The Brutalist is divisive. I think Conclave is not really that divisive.
See,
everybody's just like, this movie is good.
Yes, meatball down the middle Conclave, but I feel like Anora has that sort of everybody likes it spot locked.
I agree. I've kind of been holding my water on that because I feel like that can be the last part of this discussion. But the Conclave screenplay nomination here is interesting because that's the only real adaptation. Everything else here is an original. And so when you only have one screenplay category, as the Globes do, and 6 nominees, to put Conclave there is notable, I'll say. And I think you're right that Peter Straughn's adaptation of the novel could do very well at the Academy Awards. I
think it's also just, I heard a lot of people in watching it and talking to people who had seen it, who work in the industry, sort of like Sorkin's name keeps coming up as like people thinking of it as like Sorkin-esque in a way. And they mean it as a compliment. And sort of like, so when you think of like sort of a dialogue rich.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think that screenplay means, as is the case with editing, as is the case with sound, the most talking, the most sound, the most, editing. And so I can really see Conclave getting that award.
Okay, let's talk about box office in relationship to this show.
Isn't Emilia Perez adapted because it's based on an opera?
Technically, yes. Okay. I see, it is based on an opera that Audiard wrote that is based on another opera. But it is more original, I would say, than Conclave.
True.
Okay. So, two things. One, in terms of box office, you've got
Wait, can I just say one last thing about your Guy Pearce?
Yes.
Please do not rob me of an opportunity to talk to you about the Brutalist.
Please speak about him. I'm 100% rooting for him, even though I don't think he's has a chance to win this category.
I know, and I've been really happy for you in terms of like the Brutalist's rise. The Brutalist has emerged as this sort of like, if you care about cinema, it will be the Brutalist.
Are you saying that's my fault?
I not fault. Mm-hmm. You're a thought leader, Sean.
I am but a scoutmaster to the Brutalist boys. I am but a simple, noble man teaching lessons of great cinema.
And I love that for you. Guy Pearce, Adrian Brody and the Brutalists have been having like a really steady time.
Yeah.
Guy Pearce has actually not been popping up the way that I think a lot of us expected him to.
He hasn't really been winning critics prizes, That's usually where you want to see. Yeah.
Yeah, he really needed this. Like Kieran, it feels like a foregone conclusion that Kieran Culkin is going to win this category. And I know you and I talked about that several weeks ago. But Guy Pearce needed something like this to keep his name in the conversation. So I'm happy because I would love to see him nominated for this.
I'm very curious because, just most people have not seen The Brutalist yet, just like they haven't seen Nickel Boys. But The Brutalist, I think, is the last big movie that is more or less unseen that rides on its performances in a big way.
That's a good point.
And in all likelihood, all three of those actors are going to be nominated at the Academy Awards: Felicity Jones and Adrian Brody and Guy Pearce. And so, could there be a late wave for some of those performers potentially? I'll say Felicity Jones, the first time I watched the movie, I was a little bit mixed on what she did. And then the second time I was fully dragged over. And I'm like, yeah. And I love that character and hearing, I think, Brady Corbet and Mona Fastfold, like writing that movie together, you can feel the dynamic of like the great man and the woman that supports him and the way that they're trying to kind of support that idea and upend that idea at the same time. So I wonder, as more people see it, if the acting will get a little bit of a boost in that category, in those categories.
You have to wait a bit to get to Felicity Jones in that film. And I was worried when she showed up that she was just going to be the wife character. And they definitely complicated that. So I appreciate that. But yeah, Guy Pearce being here is wonderful news. And my guy, Yuri Borisov, keep on keeping on.
I'm happy for you. I'm happy for him. He's wonderful in that movie. Okay, let's talk about box office, because one thing that happened that's interesting to me is that box office doesn't maybe matter as much for these nominations. Dune, Wicked, and Gladiator 2 combined only managed 8 nominations. And that's fairly unusual given the context here. They have since, in the last couple of years, added the Box Office Achievement Award. This is, as with all Box Office Achievement Awards, extremely stupid, but I'm going to read the nominees. The nominees are Alien Romulus, Beetlejuice, Deadpool and Wolverine, Gladiator 2, Inside Out 2, Twisters, Wicked, The Wild Robot. So here's 2 things that happened here. Moana 2 is already the 5th highest grossing movie of the year. Internationally, worldwide, not nominated. Dune Part 2, also among the top 10, not here. Why
Dune Part 2 not being here is astonishing. I had to go look up what Alien Romulus made, because that was the one in here that I was quite surprised by.
It did quite well internationally.
It is the 2nd highest grossing Alien film. So just behind Prometheus. So I can't fault it. But this is the one where when you look at people's predictions, they did have Beetlejuice on here. Like this was expected. Alien Romulus, I didn't think was like really high up on people's expectations for here, because I think everyone assumed that Dune 2 would be in here. It's really wild that it isn't. This is such a weird category because, it is of course trying to chase that sort of like, popular vote. Let's let Twitter vote on this sort of ill-advised boondoggles that a lot of awards bodies have been attempting. And this is some like really esoteric sort of blend of it made a lot of money and we think it has cinematic value.
Where the fuck is Venom 3, Joanna? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. Maybe they are hoping he'll dance again.
It's his last dance. Are we not willing to recognize him Return of the King style?
I know you think that movie's trash.
It is trash.
But I do appreciate the bit.
Well, I mean, box office achievement is such a stupid idea for a variety of reasons. But for example, one of the amazing box office stories of 2024 is The Substance. The Substance making 50 some odd $50 million in America and like more than that overseas. That's just remarkable that happened.
I think it should be less like, because there is I forget what the number is, but there is like a benchmark of how much it has to make. But I think it should be the especially like, something like The Brutalist too, even not that I need The Brutalist in every category, but like, again, that hasn't been released yet, so we don't know, but that's a deceptively tiny budget on that film. So I think that sort of like the gap between budget and box office is one I would love to see rewarded. That sounds like a fascinating thing to chase versus
give Paranormal
Deadpool
Activity a Golden Globe. Yeah, absolutely.
but Deadpool and Wolverine is so, I guess you can have Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman show up and say, I'm sorry, Blake Lively, you're not getting a Globe nomination, but maybe you'll show up in your Lady Deadpool vibe, We'll
it's tough.
See.
It's really tough.
We'll see.
All right, let's try to wrap this up. Give me your big winners and big losers of this morning.
Okay. So big winners. I think the biggest winner is Sebastian Stan.
I agree.
I'm gonna give to Seb, and I'm gonna hope that whoever is helping him run his various campaigns, we sort of like drill down on what we want to focus on. Amelia Perez, challengers. We haven't talked about it a ton, but like Zendaya getting in here, wonderful stuff. And
four nominations. I'm
tempted to say Zendaya is in here in the same way that like Selena and Ari and like all this sort of stuff is in here, but actually she's great in that movie, so I will take it. Challengers, which has been absent from the conversation. It's just been sort of shrinking in people's memory, and so just this keeping it alive is great news for Challengers.
People still really like it.
Everyone likes it.
I don't know if it's because, Luca has a movie that's out right now, plus Amazon MGM has thrown their weight behind Nickel Boys, and so there's maybe not, or there's a sense that it's just a frivolous film, and so it's not serious. But like, I don't know, there's plenty of frivolity across the Best Picture race this year. So I don't know. I went on Katie's show like 3 months ago, and I was like, I'm not writing off Challengers. I think that there is a universe in which it could get in. Now, there's currently, I think the relative success of A Complete Unknown plus Sing Sing surging back makes it very hard for a movie like this to get in. But you never know.
I mean, where would you most like to see Challengers win?
I mean, I think it could win in score, and that would be a very justified win. And I love the Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score. And I think it is like, I don't want to say a step forward in movie score, but it's like, it is a way to kind of contemporize what scores are, and the way that written instrumental music works in mainstream movie making. Because, you think score and you just think like Alan Silvestri, you think Thomas Newman, you think even Hans Zimmer, who has some aspects of kind of pushing the ball forward instrumentally. It still is like John Williams and Max Steiner and the whole history of orchestral music supporting film. And using club music as a score of a movie is been done before, but in this context is relatively new to me. And so I would love to see something like that happen.
I think especially in a sports movie like this, like a sexy sports movie like this. And I think that the Challenger score is so good and does exactly what I think the Saturday Night score thinks it's doing, with love and respect to Jean-Baptiste. But like that score actually really did not work for me. It was distracting, whereas Challenger's score I think is enhancing. So Challengers, let's go. So those are my biggest winners, I would say. And then
we mentioned The Brutalist that did well today, obviously. And Anora, I think, basically held serve, and that's really what it needs to do. I think it's trying to not overshoot too soon.
Right.
We've got 2.5 full months of this left, and it's here in Best Picture, it's here in Director, it's here in Actress, it's here in Supporting Actor, it's here in Screenplay. Like, it's kind of where it needs to be.
Would you say A24 is a big winner today?
I mean, it's gotten nominations here for The Brutalist, for Sing Sing, for Queer. What am I forgetting?
Heretic.
And Heretic, of course.
Baby Girl.
And Baby Girl. Yeah, I mean, but, newsflash.
A Different
A24
Man.
knows how to run the awards game.
Yeah,
they're great at this.
I think the way that The Brutalist and Anora are sort of sitting at the top, usually it's A24 against A24 against something else. I don't know why I say A24. I just sometimes do, but like against something else that feels bigger, glossier. But this is like The Brutalist versus Anora year.
I mean, imagine if Anora was an A24 movie where there's a universe in which that could have happened. Sean Baker's last movie was an A24 movie.
Thank you. Yeah.
But that's not the case. But regardless, like those kinds of studios are very nimble in this environment. The Substance is a movie, and movie is putting all of their energy behind it because they can. They don't have another movie to put their energy behind. So I don't know. And also, frankly, those movies have a lot to gain in terms of box office and VOD purchase that some bigger movies don't have as much. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to keep a close watch on a couple of movies that, Wicked is in the midst of its huge peaking moment, or maybe it's not peaking. Maybe this is an extended run. It's doing incredibly well at the domestic box office, not super well overseas. And I don't know if there's any ramifications on that with the Oscar race.
I'm curious about Sing Sing because there was this question of like, what are they doing with Sing Sing? They dropped it in August. Why would they drop it in August? And they're re-releasing it on, is it the day that the Oscar nominations are coming out?
Yeah, whatever January date that is.
That's the strategy, and that's fascinating to me.
I don't think it's going to really matter with the box office. I think it's all about what you said, which is getting people either in the room with them or just getting them to fire up the Academy portal and watch it. And if they watch it, they're going to feel just like we did, which is just like, it's just a great movie. It just makes you feel good. It's moving. The performances are spectacular. It's just a good film. And that goes a long way sometimes, especially in a race with such an unsettled crop.
Yeah. I want to shout out one last loser, if I may.
Please.
Which is let's pay our respects to We Live in Time. If Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh weren't going to get nominated, the Globes are not going to get nominated anywhere, and I don't think this film is going to get nominated anywhere. And it's a film I quite enjoyed. So
I did as well.
Fairly well.
I was moved. And that's the one A24 loser, I guess, in this race. You did point out that we've got Ariana versus Selena Gomez coming. You feeling excited about that?
I feel like Amanda would have said it, so I thought I should say it to honor her. Yeah. And also Miley is in the mix here with an original song. And
how do we get Sabrina Carpenter in here? Can we get Olivia Rodrigo nominated somehow?
What is Taylor doing?
Yeah, what is she doing?
She's just finished the Eras tour.
Great point.
So she's got some time, She was
nominated last year for box office achievement for her film
the Eras tour.
Yeah, that was super
Which is cinema, right? That's cinema.
Definitely.
Joanna,
thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We're coming back to talk about the Globes. You'll be back. You'll do some predictions with me at the beginning of January, and then we'll cover the show. Who's hosting the show? I forget.
Nikki Glazer.
Oh, great. I love Nikki Glazer. How wonderful. She's so funny. Oh, that's actually great news. I'm really excited to watch it. She's very, very mean in the best way possible. So I hope that plays out well.
It's going to be really great.
Thanks to Joanna Robinson. Thank you to Jack Sanders for his work on today's episode. Thanks to our producer, Bobby Wagner, for his work on today's episode. Shout out to Jack and Bobby. We got fucking Juan Soto, baby! Later this week, the king of physical media comes to the big picture. Who is that, you might ask? You'll have to listen in to find out. See you then.